Even find his Twitter account.
Sad. It's an institution.
Yeah, I don't think it exists anymore. I look it up and it's just the first Twitter account that comes up is exposing Vegas.
All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you with Greg Ehrenberg as we get ready to break down Saturday MLB action, focusing on the 9-game slate. We'll do a little rundown of the early games as well. The only thing you need to know is Aaron Judge is still hitting home runs.
In bulk. And it's funny, I've had a bunch of arguments on Twitter in recent days.
No, you arguing on Twitter?
Well, but to me, like, I think Judge has won the MVP at this point. Like, obviously, weird things could happen, or an injury, or some really unforeseen circumstance. But to me, like, Judge has already locked up the MVP. And actually, I think the minus 200 odds that are available now, like, isn't even long enough. Like, I think you should be like minus 500, something like that at this point. He's been so ridiculously good. And it's also funny because as I'm having this conversation with people yesterday, it's like every time I get a tweet, oh, he hit a home run, hit a grand slam, robbed a home run. He's just been on a crazy, crazy run. Like how many home runs has he hit just in the week since the All-Star break?
Oh, it's phenomenal. He's up to 41, leading the league. Grand slam to get 41 last night. The Yankees, even with Stanton and Rizzo having each missed time, they're both ranked 7th overall with 24. Yankees are tops by far as a team. This is just, it's phenomenal. And they added Andrew Benintendi, and it would not surprise me to see them add somebody else, if not on the offense, if not a pitcher. Crazy.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. And then, I mean, the other thing too with the Judge versus Ohtani thing is, number one, Ohtani's been like fairly shitty as a hitter as of late. I don't know if you've taken note of this at all, but what does Ohtani have? Like a 70 WRC plus in July, which is really where Judge versus Ohtani has really separated themselves. Even if you just go, because people say, how do you quantify the pitching and the hitting combined? Well, we wins above replacement. You just add together his hitter value and his pitcher value. And it's not particularly close between Judge and Ohtani when you do that. And the main reason is just because Ohtani hasn't hit the ball well. 95 WRC plus since the All-Star break. And overall for the year, he's got like a 125 WRC plus, which is, above average. But it just makes him somewhere in the neighborhood of like the 50th best hitter in baseball, whereas Judge is just, far and away better than everybody else at the moment.
Ohtani, just imagine Ohtani and Trout. Just if Rendon would have been healthy, those guys would have been healthy. What could have been, Angels fans? What could have been? You know what can be is all you watching hitting the like button. We would appreciate that because we have some free tools today. Not only do we have some free tools, we have all the tools for free for the night slate. So 100% free on the night slate. You can get all of the top stacks, the top hitter tools, top pitchers, the projections, everything free for tonight's MLB night slate. Definitely worth checking out. And I believe there's a two or a 3 gamer tonight. So you can see how all the different tools work for free. We had a lot of people saying, well, I only get 1 tool a week. Well, that's why you get the subscription and you get all the tools all the time whenever you want them. But we're going to show you the evening slate tools for MLB, but you can sign up to get all of the tools by using the promo code MLB Strategy Show. That is all one word, MLB Strategy Show. That gets you 50% off your first 1 week package, or actually your first package there. So you can check that out. So this is for new users, but it's definitely worthwhile. And there are a lot of fun things that you can get behind the paywall. You get full access to Discord in addition to all of the tools. The DFS 101 channel, very helpful. A lot of good insight there. There's nits like me telling how to take advantage of various sites' bonuses and their rewards programs. Greg, I live for the crowns on DraftKings.
There's nobody who's gamed the reward system better than EMac over here, who just grinds out. And by the way, this is what people should do, especially if you're lower stakes players. Like EMac has gotten himself into being the Onyx tier, which is the highest rewards tier on DraftKings, just by grinding out, well, not just by, but primarily through grinding out all the achievements that are available on DK for every single sport. EMac doesn't miss a slate for anything. So, I mean, there are definite ways to take advantage of the different bonus offers DK has and make some actual money off it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, those are good ones. And then of course, Prize Picks, the easy way to do it. Your promo code Osmo gets you $100 deposit match. I love playing on Prize Picks. We'll talk about them. But you get $100 deposit match for them. Those promotion funds come out of your account first into the contest. You don't even have to do anything special. That balance goes down first. And then you also get 30 free days of Osmo Premium, Stokastic Premium by using the promo code Awesome. All right, let's get into the games here, Greg. We had an embarrassment of riches for pitching because of the All-Star break kind of syncing up most of the aces. Today, we're kind of on the back half of rotations. We're looking at the likes of Framber Valdez, Joe Musgrove, Sonny Gray, et cetera, being at the top end, and then a lot of question marks. So this should be a fun tournament slate. We, of course, do have Clayton Kershaw, but he is pitching in Coors Field, which will suppress the Rockies a little bit, but then we'll have to see what Greg likes when we get to Colorado. Apparently, rumor is you've been playing the Dodgers chalk lately. Is this true?
Yeah, and differentiating a pitcher. Actually, last night was a really weird slate for the chalk pitching because Garrett Cole got his ass kicked. That was not the reason I didn't play Garrett Cole last night. Not within the realm of possibility. I think it was because he would outright pitch bad. I just thought there was a chance for other guys to pitch better than him, but he sucked. I wasn't on Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn ended up being okay, but my pivot off Lance Lynn was Alex Cobb, and Alex Cobb way exceeded my expectations. So things worked out for me last night, but not for any of the reasons that I thought they were going to.
Yeah, I was asleep at 10:30, so I missed all the good stuff last night. I woke up, broke even, and moved on. So that was always makes me happy. I was winning nicely when I went to sleep, but there were still a few games left. So, and I don't think the Judge Grand Slam had happened yet. But in any event, let's talk about today's games. Starting off, we're going to go to Houston. We're going to look at the Seattle Mariners. Chris Flexen on the bump for the Mariners. Framber Valdez and his -5-degree launch angle over his last 1,100 batters will be taking on the Mariners in a fun scheduling twist. Last night was the 6th time that Justin Verlander faced the Mariners. Tonight will be just the 2nd time Framber Valdez has faced the Mariners. Gotta love when the schedules line up like that. Valdez, normally not our number one pitcher, but he certainly looks like that today. How are you approaching what looks to be a chalky Valdez? And would you take any Mariners against him?
Pitching options are bad today, like really bad across the board. So we have Framber Valdez and Joe Musgrove both picking up a bunch of ownership in fairly difficult matchups. Musgrove, Valdez, both north of 30% ownership. And then the other pitchers that are somewhat popular on the slate, it's Johnny Cueto picking up ownership. We've got Ranger Suarez picking up a good amount of ownership. Ian Anderson's going to be popular today. And, a lot of these make sense. It's just hard to know what to do with these pitchers when you consider that the options are just not that great. Like you mentioned, Clayton Kershaw is pitching in Coors Field. I think that's going to be the easiest way to differentiate a pitcher. But as far as Valdez goes, it's hard to get away from him. And I think for sure for cash games, I think he has to be in your lineups on DraftKings FanDuel. We could consider whether we want to go with Musgrove or Valdez as the top high-end pitcher in cash games. I lean towards Valdez because he's been, pretty consistently decent as of late. And it's hard to love the matchup. I think in large field tournaments, he's going a little bit over-owned, but certainly one of the safer pitching options of the day. No interest in the Mariners on the other side, though. A lot of bad pitchers, and Valdez just isn't one of them.
Yeah, it's hard to get even excited about any of the Mariners, and we don't even have to worry about mentioning them for the evening slate or the late slate because this is the first game going off at 7:10 this evening. When we look to the other side here, you've got Chris Flexen, who was semi-serviceable last year. He's starting to come back to reality. He reinvented himself in the KBO in the 2020 season, got a second chance. If we remember back to when he was with the, I believe it was the Metropolitans, he basically washed out of the league, just could not stay in it, just allowed way too much power. He's done a better job of limiting power. Limiting power. He's developed the knack for having less than well hit balls. off of his offerings, though the league is kind of catching up to him. So I think we look to the usual suspects, top half dozen of the Astros. They've got Pena, McCormick, and then whomever else is their other outfielder batting at the bottom of the order, along with Maldonado. Those could be some differentiation options. Seems like this looks like a secondary stack, perhaps 3-man stacks. How do you feel about a full stack with all of the other offensive options we have on the slate with the Astros?
Yeah, so it match up tonight for the Houston Astros against Chris Flexen. Flexen's numbers this year are really not great. His expected ERA is nearly 5. He's also not generating strikeouts at all. And not that he was a high strikeout guy in the past, but 16.5% is really low. So I'm a little surprised to see the Astros with a team total fairly modest at under 5 runs. I'm probably a little bit higher on them than the books are, which is also going to be something that gets factored into projections because projection sources pull data from sports books in terms of expected team totals. So I'm inclined to be a little bit overweight to the field on the Houston Astros. I also think this is a really good single entry target because if the Dodgers end up being, the Dodgers ownership's kind of relatively modest today relative to some other slates projected for 26%. But if that ownership comes up later on the day, Houston's definitely one of the teams I would be considering for single entry.
Okay. That is fair enough. Moving on, we've got 8 more games to go. Let's get to those. But for those of you just joining, please do hit that like button. It definitely helps us out. We are cresting towards 80,000 subscribers. I suspect we will get there right around NFL Week 1. So if you have not yet subscribed to the Stokastic YouTube account, please do so. We have multiple other channels now under our umbrella, including a best ball channel, as well as Odd Shopper. So all sorts of good content coming out nearly round the clock, especially with all of our videos on demand. Game 2 here. You mentioned Johnny Cueto. Here we are, the Oakland Athletics in Chicago taking on the White Sox. 5 implied run total for the White Sox going against Paul Blackburn. Paul Blackburn, Mr. Mediocre at best. I haven't looked it up, but I want to say in his cups of coffee across 6 major league seasons, I think he still is about or has not quite hit 200 career innings. I'll pull this up, Greg. Seems like he's been around forever, but just never pitches that much. You've got the White Sox looking pretty solid on offense. We like them against lefties better, but hey, let's make an exception for all-star Paul Blackburn. We'll pick on him. And then Johnny Cueto. Is the deal with the Devils still intact at this point, Greg? His ERA keeps going down. I don't know how this is possible.
Yeah, and his underlying numbers aren't great. They're not terrible. Cueto's way exceeded my expectations. I thought that he would be, a few starts in the big leagues, get hit hard, and then he'd be out of the league. Yeah. And I was wrong. He's been serviceable, more than serviceable, 2.89 ERA, but then 3.97 expected ERA, 3.98 FIP. Do I think he could keep up these numbers? No, but for sure he's been decent. I think the thing that I get tripped up on, though, is he's expensive and pitching against the A's today. Obviously, the A's are a great matchup. But do I want to pay up $8,900 for Cueto on DraftKings or $9,900 on FanDuel when he's popular? No, that's too much for me to want to pay for Johnny Cueto. Probably my biggest regret of last night's slate is that I didn't like Lance Lynn at his ownership. It was crazy to me going up against the Oakland A's. And ultimately, Oakland ended up being the best stack of the slate against Lance Lynn. And I thought that I just had enough leverage just not playing Lance Lynn. I didn't really think that there was that much upside in stacking against him, but there clearly ended up being it because they smashed Lance Lynn. They had a whole bunch of homers as well. So I think for today, not only am I going to be light on Johnny Cueto, but also considering it's a little bit of a smaller slate, I'm okay with playing some Oakland bats for value as well, just to get some leverage off of Cueto as well.
All right. For those of you interested in free content, the Spotlight Hitters and Top Stacks article, free every day in front of the paywall, did mention the Oakland Athletics as a stack for the evening slate going against Mr. Lance Lynn. Lynn still ended up, I liked your guys' call out. I forget if it was you or Lindquist calling out the going over 100 pitches for Lance Lynn. That worked out on Prize Picks last night, as did the taking the under on his fantasy points. Kind of some opposite bets there, but boy, he trooped his way. What did he get? End up with like 104 pitches or something along those lines. Rather impressive. But yeah, don't forget about the Athletics. They're que horrible. However, you look at their three main hitters that are consolidated right in the middle of their order. That's usually where you can get their production. So at least they are adjacent to each other, which increases the synergy and effectiveness in the stack if they themselves are effective. Looking at the White Sox in particular here, how do you rank these guys out as individual hitters?
So as individual hitters, this is actually my favorite low-owned stack of this. It was my favorite low-owned stack, I'm pretty sure, last night as well, in terms of just finding a team that was 1% owned. And here's the bucket of teams that are 1% owned as a stack today. The White Sox, the Padres against Sonny Gray, the Twins against Joe Musgrove, the Mariners against Framber Valdez, and the Pirates against Ranger Suarez. So if you're going with a very, very low owned stack, I think the White Sox are the clear 1% owned stack to get to today, because Paul Blackburn, like you said, the reason he's not had very many pitches pitched at the big leagues, despite being in the league for, I think this is his 6th year or something like that, and still hasn't accumulated that many innings, is because teams typically, well, the A's actually, because it's the only team he's been on, they give him a few starts per year and like, oh, that's right, this guy sucks, we don't want him to pitch anymore. And while he's been better this year, it's still not like he's some lights out pitcher. He's not generating very many strikeouts, sub 20% K rate. He's never had a K rate over 20% in his entire career. And then also just the stuff isn't there. Low 90s fastball, very mediocre off speed stuff. He also walks a decent amount of guys, which isn't great when you're limited, when you have a limited amount of strikeouts to get to as well. So the White Sox offense, it's been disappointing this year, but I do think they're in a better spot than the other really, really unowned teams.
Right. I looked it up. 101 innings this year in 19 starts for Blackburn. That gives him a career 239 innings across 6 different seasons, 49 total appearances. It's just fun with numbers. All right, on to our next one here. We've got the Philadelphia Phillies at Pittsburgh. You've got Ranger Suarez on the bump. Greg mentioned him as one of the not so great pitchers, but he is someone we will be looking at. I wrote him up as the secondary option today. If you're a little nervous about the Joe Musgrove, Sonny Gray going against each other matchup, you can look towards Suarez. He doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. He gets just enough to make it interesting and usually erase the handful of earned runs that he allows, but he is going against the Pirates, who do have the second highest strikeout rate against Southpaws this season. Their cumulative team total of active hitters is almost 26%. I didn't look to see what today's projected lineup is, but if you've been looking at them against lefties, it has been cresting towards 30% more often than not. Ranger Suarez, kind of a Framber Valdez light. Not as many ground balls, not quite as many strikeouts, but does a pretty good job of not giving up crooked numbers. So Ranger Suarez, if you're kind of looking to survive, and that sort of seems to be the operative pitching profile of the day. How are you feeling about Suarez? How do you want to attack Keller?
Yeah, I like Suarez a lot, especially when you consider that there are not good pitching options to choose from. He's cheap. The ownership isn't crazy high on him or anything like that. So the current pitcher ownership we have on him, it is, where'd the number go? Oh, here we go. So right around 20%. So here are the pitchers we have to roster around 20% ownership today. It's Ranger Suarez against the Pirates, Johnny Cueto against the A's. We've got Ian Anderson against the Diamondbacks, Drew Smyly against the Giants. I definitely like the matchup that Ranger Suarez has better than those other pitchers, other than the Cueto matchup against Oakland. But Cueto is $8,900 on DK, $9,900 over on FanDuel. So with the price point also considered, I really do like Ranger Suarez as a primary pitching option to get to. I think he's a lot of security in this spot. I also think he brings a little bit of upside. And something else that's kind of deceiving about Suarez's numbers is he really struggled at the start of the year, and he's been much better since. So if you look at the month of July, for instance, July for Ranger Suarez, 1.82 FIP, 2.56 xFIP. He's hardly walking anybody, 0.9 walks per 9 innings. So he has gotten better as the season's gone on. Not quite as good as he was last year, because last year he was ridiculously good, but he's the best salary saving option on the slate today as far as pitchers are concerned.
All right. I'm sending out a group There you go. Just send it. I don't think we sent out our boosted message to everybody in Discord that we are live right now. But see, we have 200 people watching, so we appreciate you all joining us here on a Saturday. Again, keep in mind we have all sorts of content coming up today. We do have live at 5 the MMA Live Before Lock featuring Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat Rogers. And then at 6 o'clock, you will have Gundacker and Terry McBride breaking down the main slate in MLB Live Before Lock. We will talk about the early slate towards the end of this show. But in the meantime, we are going to keep meandering through here. Is there any one-offs you would take against Suarez here? It's kind of hard to go home run hunting against a pitcher like him.
No, not at all. We have the Pirates with the lowest top stack odds on the slate. They're actually the only team in our projections with top stack odds under 2%. So it's crazy when a team is projected for less than 2% ownership and still have lower top stack odds than their projected ownership. It's hard to get to Pittsburgh. No consideration for me. And I know people are bringing up in the chat, are there any bats or anything to be concerned about? It's a no for me. It's baseball, so obviously anything could happen. I'm not going to say it's impossible for the Pirates to put up runs, but it's a very unlikely scenario. Not a team that I would be having in my player pool.
Yeah, I would be shocked. I would not be shocked with a Michael Chavez at like 2,300 coming in, maybe even a Cabrian Hayes at 3,800, but one-offs at best. I don't even see this being a secondary stack for me. Moving on to the next game, we've got the Minnesota Twins at San Diego. So it'll be an afternoon start in San Diego. The Padres will be sending out Joe Musgrove, solid pitcher. Remember, he had his no-hitter at the beginning of last season. Been adequate this year. Minnesota does boast a fair amount of power. On the other side, you have Sonny Gray, also been a relatively solid pitcher. The Padres not as good when they don't have Fernando Tatis Jr. They're still okay. Feels to me like this is a little bit of a both sides. These are two of the 5 best pitching options that we have on the main slate. And these offenses are solid enough. There will be enough leverage by selecting them as let's say, a 4-man stack going against these pitchers, just going straight into what popularity seems to be coalescing around them. I would still lean towards the pitching in both of these matchups, but as Greg mentioned, baseball being baseball is always a possibility here. Anything you want to call out in particular with our hurlers?
Let's see. So anything in particular, not anything that anybody's going to think is crazy. Like Joe Musgrove is clearly one of the better pitching options on the slate. He's currently projected for the second most ownership on DK, only behind Framber Valdez. We're doing with the highest odds of being the top scoring pitcher on this slate. As far as FanDuel goes, I do think he's a pretty good pivot off of Valdez when you consider that we have a higher projection on Musgrove. There's only a $200 separating them in salary over on FanDuel, but Valdez is picking up about double the ownership. So I think that's a reasonable pivot. My really preferred pivot in large field tournaments is going to be Clayton Kershaw because he's going totally unowned today. But Joe Musgrove, Framber Valdez, those are your 2 cash game options on the slate on DK. FanDuel, it's either Musgrove or Valdez, whichever one you prefer. There's not really too much of a difference there.
Right. Did you know that we do have a Prize Picks prop tool now?
I did know that, but you know what? Inform me of it anyway, Mac. Just let me know some of the details.
Well, I'm going to drop this into Slack here. So Prize Picks is a lot of fun. We'll do some picks here when we wrap up the main slate, but just wanted to call them out for those of you that are starting to build out lineups. You find any of the nuggets here that we mention or talk about. The nice thing about Prize Picks is it's a player prop based contest. So for those of you that do not have sports wagering in your states, you can kind of get this as an alternative in most cases. I'm lucky enough in Virginia to have both Prize Picks as well as legalized sports wagering. So I tend to play a little bit of both here. But the key things that you want to remember where Prize Picks can be an advantage for you is typically their home run bets. So they usually give you 3 and sometimes 4 players to hit a home run or not hit a home run, and they usually put most of the teams up. So that's kind of it's a yes or a no, but your odds are going to be significantly better for you in it being achieved if then they would be at the sports books. Similarly, their yes or no runs in the first inning. there's basically no, on that particular wager, there's no juice, there's no vig, if you will. Most of the sites you're going to see, you know, like a -120, -115, -130, depending on whatever it is in that. But here it's binary. It's a yes or a no. So a lot of times you can craft your cards or particular wagers that you're looking for by taking advantage of this on Prize Pick. So basically you build your cards of 2, 3, 4, or 5 questions. You can do cross sport bets. You can do same game bets. It's a lot of fun. The only rules are you can't pick more than 2 players from the same team. You can pick one of the home run props where they put in 3 players and still take 1 player of that trio on your same card to get a little bit of extra leverage. That's a good deal as well. And then the thing I like a lot is they have a number of pitches thrown, as well as fantasy points for pitchers where you go up or down, you know, above or below. They use FanDuel scoring for pitching. It's closer to DraftKings scoring for the hitting. So you got to keep in mind that, you know, quality start and the scoring for FanDuel, but it's a lot of fun there. So I definitely like Prize Picks. And if you use the promo code AWESEMO, you will get 1, a deposit match up to $100, and 2, 30 free days of Stokastic premium content by using that promo code AWESEMO when you sign up. All right, Mr. Ehrenberg here. Buxton, amazing. The rest of the pod squad, yeah. Anything, maybe a Kyle Garlick and Alex Kirilloff, anything standing out to you as batters you want to name? Or is this more, you know what, I'm going straight for the leverage and taking 3 or 4 against these pitchers when I am going against these pitchers?
Yeah, no reason to stack against Joe Musgrove on this slate. Not a spot that I want to go down. As for the Padres, kind of more of the same, because we have seen that Sonny Gray, despite some struggles here and there, overall he's good numbers for the year. And the Padres offense, they've also really struggled. So another team with really, really low top stack odds. The Padres, the Twins, the Mariners, the Pirates, these are all teams with 2.3% chance or lower of being the top scoring team of the slate in our projections. And they're all teams that I feel pretty decent about just writing off and saying, like, no need to get exposure to those squads.
Right. Clayton in chat asks, where's the McPherson family running this weekend? No races today. My wife is doing a half marathon tomorrow. I think this one is in Georgetown. So down in Washington, D.C. She's got a couple friends here that are going down there with her. They're going to do the 5K. She's going to do the half. Me, I'm going to sit on my ass and build baseball lineups. Good times ahead. Good times ahead.
There's never a point of view, Mac. It's like, boy, those marathons seem fun. I should give it a crack.
Somehow she makes me do them on my birthday every year. So there's that. And I usually do 1 or 2 others during the year. I walk them. I don't run. But
yeah, I was gonna say it can't feel great to just do one without any kind of build up or anything. But does the walking get exhausting? It would be pretty embarrassing if your wife is able to run the whole thing and you're like, I have to tap out from walking.
So it does. So I usually walk now that I'm over the hill, very over the hill. I used to try to make it under 15-minute miles for the whole course. Now I try to make it under 16-minute miles. I'm usually good for about under 15-minute miles until about mile 8, and then everything really starts hurting. But imagine walking as fast as you can for 3.5 hours without stopping. That's pretty much what it is. So
do you listen to music or anything, or podcasts?
Podcasts. I usually listen to podcasts. It definitely makes it helpful. And it's kind of fun. I do enjoy doing them because usually I'm doing the larger ones where there's crowds, or it's at we do it at Virginia Beach at a beach town or stuff like that. So it's kind of like the whole like event atmosphere is kind of fun because there's lots of people along the course. My wife does so many of them. Most of hers are done, out by wineries or in national parks, etc., where they don't have to impede traffic and they don't need as many aid stations, etc. So hers are mostly quiet, but she listens to music. So there we are. All right. I wanted to avoid talking about Dakota Hudson and Eric Fedde, but here we are. We are going to talk about them. You've got St. Louis Cardinals in Washington taking on the Nationals. I have besmirched the not so good name of Eric Fedde pretty much every time he takes the mound. I've always thought of Dakota Hudson as a better pitcher than Eric Fedde, but as I sit there and look at their numbers, since Hudson has converted into being a starter now, they're kind of about the same. Hudson gets a little more ground balls. Neither one is even above average when it comes to strikeouts. or even maintaining reasonable expected ERAs. It's just a disaster on both sides. I don't want either of these pitchers, but I do like the offenses. Well, I guess I like the 2 hitters off of the Nationals, at least until Soto is still there. But I think we can look to a lot of the Cardinals here. The Redbirds could be somewhat of a contrarian stack here. They're not quite the normal, brand names that we're used to. Plus, it's not Coors Field. I think the Redbirds are a way to go. How do you have anything nice to say about the pitchers?
Dakota Hudson's gotten really lucky this year, which I guess is kind of something nice to say. Like luck, that's a good thing. But
did he win Powerball last night? That's the true measure of luck. Did anybody win the $1 billion?
I'm sure somebody did. I haven't read about it, but people are going crazy about this on my timeline, which I kind of thought was funny. I'm sure this isn't the most original thought in the world, but like people go crazy when the Powerball, it's like, oh my God, $1 billion, I win $1 billion, but it's like $150 million and nobody gives a shit. Where people are like, I could become a billionaire, but $150 million, like, nah, I'm not interested in that. So I've always found that to be a really funny dynamic about the lottery. And is there a better expected, or I mean, I know it's negative either way. It's not plus EV to play the lottery, but is it more plus EV, EMac, do you know, to play the lottery when there's a bigger or a smaller pot?
I think it's such infinitesimal odds that it really doesn't matter.
So my thought process is that even though it's the pot is bigger, there's more people buying tickets. I would think that it's better EV to play when it's smaller. And this is totally half baked, just because you have a better chance of splitting when there's so many more people playing.
I think that's reasonable now, but with the fact that most of these contests have expanded up to 70 numbers plus a multiplier and then a special mega ball or whatever it is for the other contests, the odds of it being tied anymore are pretty slim.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know how the lottery works. Not something I'm ever going to be. Not ever going to be something that I'm interested in.
Oh, we played for a few tickets last night. Apparently nobody in Virginia won. It looks like it was somebody in Illinois that won the jackpot overall. And then there were about a dozen people that got 5 tickets correct. And then half a dozen that got 5 plus the megaplier correct. Guess I'll be going to work on Monday. Well, I guess I'll be logging into work from home on Monday still. All right, we tried to postpone it, but here we are back yet again. So you said Dakota Hudson was lucky.
Yeah.
Eric Fede is a major league pitcher? I mean, I guess that's something nice to say. There's not that many of them out there.
Well, they're both technically on big league rosters. Like you said, the numbers for them are somewhat similar. Fede hasn't had the same luck as Dakota Hudson. Like their underlying numbers are very similar. Hudson's slightly worse. Hudson has a 4.1 ERA, but that's buoyed by a low left on base percentage, a low BABIP. So he's a 4.1 ERA, but a 5.45 expected ERA, 4.49 FIP. I would expect him to be worse going forward. And Fede also 4.95 ERA, 5.01 expected ERA. None of these pitchers are good. There's no reason to consider them in DFS. As for the offenses going against them, both of them warrant consideration. Neither of them have ownership that I would consider to be way off, right around 11% for the Cardinals. That seems reasonable to me. The Nationals right around 4%. That's also reasonable. So I think the field is right on both these teams. They're teams to stack up and get to, but not in a way that I'd be way differentiated from the percentages that the fields are at right now.
All right. That seems reasonable. We've got a few more games to go here. What do we got? 4 more here on the main slate. Now we've got a good one here. The Arizona Diamondbacks in Atlanta. You've got Corbin Martin on the bump for the Diamondbacks. You have Ian Anderson, who's been a complete and utter disappointment this season after having a solid year last year for the World Series winning Braves. Looking here at, where are my notes? Corbin Martin has been just bad. So this year, somehow, we're saying nice things about people. He has not allowed a home run so far through 18 1/3 innings. He has issued 11 walks. He has had 38 fly ball outs. And we know the crooked numbers are coming, Greg, because in his 2 seasons prior to this, across 35 1/3 innings, he had 13 home runs allowed. So the home runs are coming. The crooked numbers are coming. I like pretty much everybody in the Atlanta lineup. On the other side, I think you can selectively take a few of the Diamondbacks against Anderson. He has just been horrible this season, eminently hittable here, and he's allowing power kind of to both sides of the plate. So I think we look towards like a Kettle Marte and a couple of the other power hitters, perhaps a Dalton Varsho, Walker, etc. there. So offenses in both of these. Say no to the pitchers in this one yet again. Do you have any wagers you would like for Martin? Perhaps an under on his strikeouts and over on whatever his walks number is.
He's certainly been walking a lot, guys. I'm actually curious what because I know DraftKings offers walk props. He's only made one start this year. It was his last start. He pitched 4 innings. He walked 5 hitters. Before that, he came out of the bullpen, pitched long relief, also walked 4 hitters. So his last 8 innings, he's had 9 strikeouts. That is not ideal. Let me see if they have a walk prop on him while I'm talking through this. One thing that's kind of interesting is you mentioned Ian Anderson. He's chalky today. Ian Anderson is the 3rd most popular pitcher on DraftKings, projected for 24% ownership. I view him very similar to Lance Lynn from last night.
Mm-hmm.
I think the field is much too high on Anderson, and I think there's better places to pivot to. It doesn't mean Anderson can't have success. Like Lance Lynn, for a fantasy perspective, he wasn't terrible last night. He had 17 fantasy points. There were just much better pitchers to roster at a fraction of the ownership. And I wouldn't be surprised if something similar like that happens today. Anderson, 6,900, 24% ownership going up against the Diamondbacks. It's just too much popularity for me. So if this holds, I'll just be looking elsewhere. And by the way, Lance Lynn actually ended up being way more popular than even what we had projected yesterday. Like we had him as the worst pitcher to get to from a leverage standpoint on yesterday's slate. And then he ended up being like 10% owned higher, even than what the projections were on him. So Anderson, just because of the ownership, I'm more inclined to, like you said, get leverage and stack against him than I am to play him. As for Corbin Martin, it's clearly a good spot for the Braves, but they're also the most negatively leveraged offense we currently have in the top stacks tool. And I would rather look elsewhere. Like we actually have the Dodgers today with appropriate leverage. Like they're fairly owned. So with 26% ownership going to the Dodgers and 26% top stack odds, like I don't think that's bad chalk to get to. Whereas I think the Braves are a little bit overowned.
Knowing how many people, especially in the mass multi-entry and the tournament, people use the Osmo stacks tool, do you think that we may be understating the Dodgers a little bit and overstating where things will end up with Atlanta, just because people are going to see that, make the decision as you just described, and make reality be the inverse of what we're projecting right now?
No, I can't really think that way. I mean,
Okay.
we had Lance Lynn as the most negatively leveraged pitcher yesterday, and he still ended up being crazy popular. So I'm sure there's individual cases where maybe it influences ownership a little bit, where people are like, oh, look, this team is going to be overowned, underowned, therefore I'm going to gravitate towards them. But I think it probably plays less of a role than what you're insinuating right there.
Okay. I'm looking for some conspiracies, Greg. Come on.
No, I understand.
All right. Anything else from this game that you would like to call out? Do you have any home run props from this game?
Home run props?
Yeah, any home run calls. I'm going to look up here on Prize Picks. So they should have them posted. So their total home runs for this game, you can get Matt Olson, Dansby Swanson, and Travis d'Arnaud on Prize Picks. Those are solid. They do not have the Arizona posted. The one thing you do want to remember about, if you play the Prize Picks home run contest or lock them in early, if someone doesn't start, it invalidates that question. Doesn't cancel your whole card. It just invalidates that question, takes it out. So if you had a 5-pick card, it would treat it like a 4-pick card. It's not for or against you, but even if the other 2 players end up one of them ends up hitting a home run, you still don't get credit for it. So it's sometimes it could be a little frustrating. Like if we're looking at New York tonight, we could, if we weren't so close to the All-Star break, it may be a little risky saying Judge, Torres, and LeMahieu. You could see like a Gleyber Torres getting the night off or something like that, and all of a sudden you have that great pick. The rest of your card's awesome. Judge hits a home run because that's all he does, and you don't get credit for it. Again, it doesn't hurt you. So in the long run, it's better, but they don't give you that extra cookie. So just keep that in mind for that one. I do like the Olson, Swanson, d'Arnaud home run chances against Caleb Martin.
Yeah, if I had a little bit more time, I would sit down and I would do the math based on our projections and the actual fair odds of all three of them homering. A little harder to do in the middle in the middle of the show though.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All righty. On to I believe the next game is Coors Field. Greg, we've been hoping for this one to come along. You got Kyle Freeland. It's been a rough season for him at home. He still has a decent, I guess, adequate ground ball rate. Really, no strikeout upside. You've got Kershaw, who they have, sort of been managing his workload, if you will, because they of course have their eyes on the postseason. Once again, that would be the Dodgers, so we won't see Kershaw likely go more than 6 innings tonight. Around 100 pitches feels about right. No need to push him with the postseason designs of a lengthy journey, ideally for the Dodgers here. But we know the Dodgers have an amazing offense, even the bottom half of their order. We got Trace Thompson had a home run last night. You've got, we'll see likely the righties coming out to play. We still have Chris Taylor dinged up. You still have Justin Turner dinged up, but that just may open up additional opportunities for some of the other reserve players. What is your approach here? Talk a little bit about Kershaw. You mentioned him as a positive leverage option here.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what his ownership looks like later on in the day. And it's Coors Field, right? We don't want to typically make a habit out of targeting pitchers at Coors Field. Although there are times where there's elite pitchers at Coors that I kind of think make sense. And the pitching options are bad today, right? Like who is, and I'd be curious to know in chat too, is there one pitcher you look at on this slate that you're really confident in? Just honest question. Is there any one pitcher today you look at and you go based on their price and their matchup, you're really confident they're going to have a good game relative to their price point? For me, the answer is
Valdez is it. That's it.
Who'd you answer?
Framber Valdez. It's a list of. I have an irrational appreciation for a 69% ground ball rate and a negative 4.9 launch angle over 1,107 batters dating back to the beginning of last season. So, aside from that outlier, you're absolutely correct, Greg. No,
but with that said, I'm confident that Framber Valdez will at least be decent today. I don't know that he's going to put up some great game relative to his price on DraftKings and FanDuel though, because of the lack of strikeouts. Yep. So I don't know that we look at Framber Valdez and be like, relative to his price, I'm confident he's a high upside tournament play. Whereas Clayton Kershaw, I think Kershaw is the most upside of any pitcher on this slate. The downside is also very, very significant at his price point, but with the field not getting there at all, he's projected for 1% ownership on DraftKings. He's projected for 1% ownership on FanDuel. And just trying to figure out how do I differentiate pitchers, like this is the spot that stands out to me. It's Coors Field, obviously, but the Rockies still overall don't have a great offense, and Clayton Kershaw is clearly a great pitcher. He's not coming off his best start, but even with that said, I think he warrants more than 1% ownership here. We have him with a 17% chance to be a top 2 scoring pitcher over on DK. And also just to show in our top pitchers tool the kind of minor difference between him and Musgrove and Valdez, we have Kershaw with a 7% chance to be the top scoring pitcher overall on FanDuel, whereas Valdez and Musgrove both come in at 10%. So slightly higher than Kershaw, about 50% more likely relative to Kershaw's 7% odds. But Framber Valdez is 23x the ownership of Kershaw, and then we've got Musgrove at 14x the ownership. So with that in mind, I think Kershaw is a really strong GPP play. It obviously has the potential to go south, but this is somebody who I'm willing to invest in at no ownership.
I like the way you're thinking here, Greg. It will be an adventure. The pucker factor will be turned up to 11, but hey, no guts, no glory. Who are you looking at for the hitters from the Dodgers?
Pretty much all of them. And the ownership is not problematic for them on this slate. On FanDuel, 26% ownership, 25% chance to be the top scoring team. On DK, 26% ownership, 26% chance to be the top scoring team. So when you consider also that we're not really paying up for pitching in any kind of real crazy way today, there isn't a single pitcher priced at 10K or higher on DraftKings. So what do we really need to save the salary for? Even though they're expensive, it's not that hard to get to them considering the pitching options on this slate. We have them being appropriately owned. It's not like this is one of the Coors games where they're 35% owned with an 18% chance to be a top stack. So I think the Dodgers should be the highest owned team. This is the team to get to the most today. And then we could once again differentiate a pitcher with somebody like Kershaw at 1% ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little in-team synergy there. If the Dodgers hitters are doing well, it would warrant that Kershaw at least has a better chance at getting the victory. You do have cheapies here on DraftKings with Trace Thompson at 2,800, Hanser Alberto at 2,500. And then if Austin Barnes is in the lineup as well, he is 2,400. So plenty of ways to cost average down in this one. Do you in particular care for any of the Rockies? Would it be CJ Cron, Chris Bryant, Brendan Rodgers, Randall Grichuk, kind of the righties here? And what the hell happened to Connor Joe? Speaking of losing your deal with the devil, apparently he's back to a mere mortal at this point.
And he's also been a
Hurt,
platoon player for the last couple of months or so at this point. So, I don't think they have all that much trust in Connor Joe either. For the purpose of large field tournaments, it's interesting because the field isn't playing Clayton Kershaw, but they're not really playing the Rockies either. So I have a lot more interest in Kershaw than I do the Rockies. But in large field tournaments, I'm going to be playing a little bit of both sides. A lot more ownership on Kershaw for me than the Rockies. But if I get to like 5 or 6% Rocky stacks, I'm 3x the field. And I would still feel pretty good about that kind of allocation. There's a lot of tournament upside here, and it's not going recognized by the field at all.
All right, let's get to our final two games here. Then we'll hit a little bit on the early slate, throw out some prize picks, and get on out of here. We have almost 300 watching. We're closing in on 100 likes. Get us 100 likes on this Saturday. It would be very helpful. And then we can send messages to Josh Engelman and show that, hey, look, we can get 100 likes on a Saturday. Chicago Cubs, San Francisco Giants. This will be a 6:05 local start. You have Drew Smyly on the mound at 6,800 on DraftKings. Seems reasonable, not exactly doing cartwheels because we know that the Giants will go heavy right-handed with their platoon players such as Austin Slater and Darren Ruff coming into play here. I like Wilmer Flores as a one-off. Jake Junis, I think he's dinged up. I thought I read a blurb somewhere yesterday that said he was kind of on a pitch count limit. Let me see if I can find anything more about that, but nothing overly exciting about him. He was sort of claimed off the scrap heap by the Giants. Earlier this season, they had him down in AAA, and then they brought him up for the Washington Nationals series earlier in the season, and then he's kind of stuck around in their rotation after washing out with Cincinnati. Anything of note for the pitchers here? I guess Smyly deserves more than just a passing mention.
Yeah, so I think Smyly is a really good pivot off of Ian Anderson. Because if you look at the projections we have on the two of them, it's really similar, but Ian Anderson is far more popular. So this is kind of similar to me, the Alex Cobb versus Lance Lynn situation, where we have two pitchers with a pretty similar projection, yet we've got one of them picking up about double the ownership. And by the way, yesterday we had it projected as double the ownership, but it actually ended up being Lance Lynn was like 3-4x the ownership of Alex Cobb, which was just crazy to me, considering the quality of those two pitchers yesterday. I don't feel terrific about Smyly, but relative to ownership, I would rather play him than Ian Anderson. It's a tough matchup against the San Francisco Giants, but there is a little bit of strikeout upside in Smyly. I don't know. Maybe I'll just pay up for pitching more on this slate. I don't know that I'm going to need to get all the way down to Smyly, but at least per the numbers in our tools right now, Smyly does look like a slightly more favorable pitcher to get to than Ian Anderson.
All right. I've got the news up here for Junis. He had missed about 4 weeks from June 10th till middle of July with a strained hamstring. He came back on the 17th, just before the All-Star break, threw 34 pitches in his last outing on Monday. He threw 62. They said he's probably going to be good for around 75 to 80. Just keep that in mind if you are playing the late slate, which I know I will. And oh yes, you get all the free Awesemo tools. The full suite of MLB tools is available for tonight's late slate. So you can check out the full suite of the sweetness. Anything from the offenses? Could we see an in-game farewell with Wilson Contreras or Ian Happ as the Cubs look to trade anything else of value that's not under a young player's contract?
I don't understand the deal with the Wilson Contreras thing. I feel like 3 times in the last 2 weeks, there's been some clip about him crying in the dugout.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, did he get traded? And then he never did. So I'm just confused by the whole thing. Is he dealing with something else we aren't aware of? But yeah, there's been because that's always the trade thing where it's, oh, look, it's the hugs and the early leaving the game, heading to the locker room and all that. And he just doesn't get traded, just in the lineup again the next day. And it's happened. Like there was the video the other day of really emotional farewell. Ian Happ and Wilson Contreras playing the last game as a Cub, hugging each other on the field and crying afterwards. And then they're both on the team the next day. So I don't know, maybe, but I'm not playing them in this spot either.
All right. You know who gets to judge the tears tonight? That would be Wilmer Flores. Remember when he was crying in the middle of the game when he thought he was traded from the Mets?
Oh, yeah. And then he wasn't.
About 5 years ago. Yeah. And then he wasn't traded. But Wilmer Flores and the Magic Tears. Good times. Good times. Just keep in mind that once a right-hander comes in from the bullpen, you'll probably lose out on Austin Slater and Darren Ruff. Flores should be in the lineup most of the game, as should Yerman Mercedes. So, but the other righties, your mileage may vary. Final game of the main slate. We'll hit on the early slate and mention a few prize picks and get on out of here. But you got the Texas Rangers with Glenn Otto going against Chase Silseth. Glenn Otto, bad, very, very bad, like horrible, terrible, bad. But guess what? So are the Angels on offense. You can still look to Ohtani, Taylor Ward, and Jared Walsh, maybe even sprinkle in a little Max Stassi, but that's really it for the Angels. I don't really want to take Silseth. I really don't want to take Glenn Otto. This is a late slate only play on DraftKings where I will be forced to play two of these crappy four pitchers we've talked about. What do you have? Anything worth merit?
Well, one thing I will mention, the over-under for strikeouts today, EMac, 5.5. How many times this year do you think Glenn Otto has had 6 or more strikeouts?
0.
Once out of 14 starts. So I get the Angels are a really easy team to strike out, but this seems pretty inflated. There's been a bunch of pitchers with inflated strikeout props against the Angels, and this one looks very inflated to me. So I like the under 5.5 for Glenn Otto. That's really the most I have to say about anything of value in this game. I don't want to roster Chase Silseth as a pitcher. I don't want to roster Otto as a pitcher for DFS purposes. And Silseth's also picking up a little bit of ownership. He is 11% owned. I guess if you absolutely needed to punt with a pitcher who's under 6,500, he is the best option. The other really cheap guys, it's Glenn Otto, Chase Silseth, Eric Fede, Corbin Martin, and Kyle Freeland. Sure, of those guys, Silseth is the best option. I don't think it's necessary salary savings. So the pitchers in this spot, they are both going to be a no-go for me. There's also a lot of ownership going to the Angels. The Angels are 8% owned as a team. That's too much ownership for me to want to get to. And then I don't really have all that much interest in the Rangers offense while they're missing Corey Seager. So this is a pretty uninteresting game for me in DFS. And I'm really, really curious. Just don't get why the Angels are the 4th most popular team on DK today.
Perhaps because over his last 7 starts, Otto has allowed 50. That is 50 base runners with only 23 strikeouts. So double the base runners as compared to strikeouts in his last 31.2 innings. Yikes.
Yeah, it's not great, but I mean, the Angels have made the likes of Zach Greinke look good as of late. So it's just a really bad offense. And the other thing too is it's not just that Mike Trout is out. Ohtani has been not good at the plate for about a month and a half now. Like he's not been a good hitter. So there just isn't firepower in the offense at the moment. It's easy enough for me to stay away from them when they're going to be chalk.
All right. Early slate action. I believe you're going to call out the Yankees against John Heasley. Nearly a 6 implied run total. Your antidote to that would be the Blue Jays. They are going against Drew Hutchinson, who they also have about a 6 implied run total there. And what pitching? No pitching stands out. Nestor Cortez, I guess, is our one pitching option on the early slate. What else are you seeing as you peruse the 4 games between 1 and 4 o'clock?
Sure. So Nestor Cortez right now we have projected for 60% ownership on the early slate, which that'll happen when the pitching options mostly suck. But I do think that Eric Lauer is going a little bit overlooked just because I know that it's far removed from it at this point, but he was legitimately really good in the first half of the season. He's dropped off a little bit since then. But on a smaller slate with weak pitching options going up against a Red Sox team that has really struggled as of late, Eric Lauer only being 17% owned, I think that's the best contrarian pitching option because it's really the only one. So the other here are the low owned pitchers that we have for the early slate. It's Eric Lauer, Then it's Nick Pivetta at $9,100 against the Brewers. There's Jonathan Heasley against the Yankees, Drew Hutchison against the Blue Jays. Of those pitchers, I feel the best about Eric Lauer at 17% ownership. So that would be the tournament play at pitcher. The safest option is clearly Nestor Cortez. I'm not super high on him, but it's relative to the other options we have to choose from. So I think fair option to get to Eric Lauer for contrarian purposes, Nestor Cortez if you're just going to play the chalk or playing cash games at pitcher. Do you see anything else at pitcher, EMac? Because it's pretty clear cut looking at our data on the site.
I do not want anything to do with Nick Pivetta. That I can guarantee here. So kind of dovetailing here back into price pick. So the over under on his strikeouts is 5. Now you won't get that on books very often because they don't really like the push. So they'll do the hook one way or the other because they can vary the vigorish or the juice, etc., to entice you or to penalize you for buying in for the half of whatever the stat is. But I'm right on the line with Pivetta at 5. I'd prefer the under 5.5. So, of course, we've mentioned Prize Picks multiple times, but the promo code AWESOMO will get you a deposit match up to $100 with your first deposit and get you 30 free days of AWESOMO premium content. I do want to throw out one little reminder. The BetMGM offer, that expires tomorrow. This is your last chance to get in on the BetMGM offer. To do that, you can just go to my article on the homepage. There's links in there. But if you bet $10 today on BetMGM, you'll win $200. Don't even have to win the bet. They're going to give you $200, basically $190. But if you win the bet, then you can get more. So that expires tomorrow. So you'll want to jump in on that. You can check that out. But I do like on the sports wagering sites where we can get the under 5.5 for Nick Pivetta. I called that out in the article. Let me see where my notes are here. It's under additional opportunities. I said Pivetta has struggled mightily over his last 4 starts. We can look to take advantage of him in the player props market. We have him for 4.7 strikeouts. That's a 65% probability of falling under the 5.5. The Milwaukee lineup, only Willy Adames and Hunter Renfroe have a 25% strikeout rate or higher. The other thing is Pivetta has been, aside from getting lucky against the Guardians, got his ass kicked in his last few starts. He may not make it into the 5th inning, which really curtails his chances of getting 5.5 strikeouts. So that's the wager I like. A Prize Picks counter for that. We'll go back to the Yankees with their home runs. We do have the Yankees lineup out, so take the Yankees home runs.
And I like the Yankees a lot for the early slate. And maybe you guys are looking at the slate and think, well, surely the Yankees are popular. Not really. They're not even the most popular team on the slate. The Blue Jays against Drew Hutchison are more popular than the Yankees. And then also the Brewers are picking up comparable ownership against Pivetta. The Red Sox are getting comparable ownership against Lauer. So we've got 4 popular offenses on the slate that are grouped really closely in ownership. Blue Jays, Yankees, Brewers, Red Sox. Of those teams, I like the Yankees the most against Jonathan Heasley. Could chalk just Judge should start the game with 14 fantasy points, and then you work from there because he'll get his homer at some point. As for the lower owned offenses on this slate, it's hard to like any of them. The Rays against Zach Plesac, the Tigers against Ross Stripling, the Guardians against Corey Kluber, the Royals against Nestor Cortez. The ownership's pretty accurate on this slate. It looks like the field has it correct. All these teams are picking up a little bit of ownership. I would just build my lineups around the Yankees.
That makes a lot of sense. You did mention Kluber. He would be the other pitcher besides Cortez, I think, that kind of stand out a little bit here. So those would be the guys we would look to. Look at that, Greg. We're rounding in nicely, right in on the hour here. Any final thoughts before we get on out of here?
No, I think.
Do we have an Awesome Hall of Fame producer, Mike? Let's do the Awesome Hall of Fame since we have a hot minute here. But you can do final thoughts. Let me get this up on my screen so I can see. So my old tired eyes can read out the correct names here. Also, I have terrible eyesight, but it is hard to read that on this screen when I'm looking through. It's always funny when some of this stuff sneaks through. It's like, oh, we probably shouldn't have included this guy with this Twitter handle. But things happen. All right, I've got this up here. So we've got Dan 1312 here, $30,000 victory. That is pretty sweet here. So reminder, if you guys want to take part in the Awesome Hall of Fame, we celebrate wins of all shapes and sizes here. You go to Stokastic Stokastic.com. I guess it's the Stokastic Hall of Fame. Stokastic.com/avatar. Download that Stokastic avatar. Put that into your profile. And if you finish top 3, first, second, or third, no ties, first, second, or third, you can get 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. Any contest of 5,000 people or more. So shout out there for Mr. Scorpion, took home $30,000 there on FanDuel. We've got Mike Campbell. I believe Mike Campbell's in chat as well, but he has $5,000, 5,000 reasons to thank the Stokastic golf crew there. Tony Finau led him to victory last week. Finau, my favorite player. I was happy to see him win. So shout out there to Mike. You've got Logan French coming in with a $300 victory there. Looks like Formula One racing. Greg just says deal with it. Greg likes to dabble with Formula One racing as well. He enjoys the open cockpits. We'll just
I didn't know. By the way, I didn't know that I was on screen. I was just trying to mess you up while you're doing the read. I didn't know if I was going to be on screen. Now you could put me on at some point here. So you see, I was just going to put on weird filters to try to break you while you're doing the read.
I will break you. We've got Bob C rolling in $37,000. A nice little 10x night there. Says shout out to Josh Engelman and Adam Ship my money share. Those two are down at the DraftKings live MMA finals. I'm sure they will be at strip clubs later tonight. Be sure to follow along with those two chuckleheads on Twitter. Our next one here, Lucky got lucky, $1,000 victory here for Larry. And then our final one here, you've got Elway's Army. I've seen Elway's Army popping around. He likes to play down there in the low dollar stuff. He's pretty good. Took down the mini max. Good for you, Dave. Good for you. All right, let's see how amazing Greg looks. No pictures today for Greg, no autographs. You can find him on Twitter. He will be solving all of the world's ills. He will be letting people know who are the devious and miscreants out there. He took down Vegas Dave. Looks like he took down Mitch. We'll see who he takes down today. But with that, you can follow Greg on Twitter at G Ehrenberg DFS. I am at EMac DFS. And of course, it is Stokastic_COM. Shout out to Ospio, the producer. Good luck, gamers.